Please be seated. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed your lunch. During the lunch hour, if your answer is yes to any of my questions, please raise your hand. During the lunch hour, did any of you have any discussions amongst yourselves or with anybody else about the case? No hands are being raised. Did any of you read or listen to any radio, television, or newspaper reports about the case? No hands are being raised. Did any of you use any type of an electronic device to go on the internet to do independent research about the case, people, places, things, or terminology? No hands are being raised. And finally, did any of you read or create any emails, text messages, Twitters, tweets, blogs, or social networking pages about the case? No hands are being raised. Thank you very much. Mr. De La Rianda?
Your Honor, at this time we would formally play the Hannity interview on July 18th, 2012. And I think there's a preliminary instruction, of course.
Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, at the direction of the court, certain portions of the defendant's interview with Sean Hannity on July 18th, 2012 have been excised or redacted based upon legal determinations made by the court. The parts excised or redacted are not relevant, and you are not to concern yourselves with why this occurred or with the content of any excised or redacted portions. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. This will, for the record, states Exhibit 180.
Tonight, in an interview that you will only see right here on Hannity, George Zimmerman, the man charged with second-degree murder of Trayvon Martin, breaks his silence. Now, earlier today, I traveled to Seminole County, Florida. Let's go back to the night of the shooting. Take us back to that night. You were going to the store. Let's start at the beginning.
I was going to Target to do my weekly grocery shopping. Sunday nights was the only nights, Sunday after we mentored the kids, we would always go grocery shopping and do our cooking for the week. So I wanted to go to Target, and I headed out, and that's the last time I've been home.
Since then, you never went back since that day. We all have heard the 911 call. On that 911 call, you had mentioned that there had been a number of break-ins in the neighborhood. Why were you a community watch person? How long were you involved in that, and why did you become a community watch person?
In August of 2011, there was a home invasion. A young lady was home with her 9-month-old baby, and they broke in her sliding glass door. She barricaded herself in the upstairs bedroom, and my wife was home by herself, and she saw the people that burglarized her run through our backyard with their belongings, and even though my wife wasn't certain what happened, that was enough to scare her and shake her up, and I promised her I would do what I could to keep her safe.
Now, your gun was legal. You had a legal weapon in the state of Florida.
Yes, sir.
Why did you feel the need to carry a gun? A lot of people maybe have a weapon inside their home, but you decided to carry yours. Why did you think it was necessary to have a weapon with you, and did you carry it at all times?
I carried it at all times except for when I went to work.
Yeah. A lot of this case, legally, has to do with stand your ground. You've heard a lot about it, and I was just curious, prior to this night, this incident, had you even heard stand your ground?
No, sir.
You'd never heard about it before? Wow. Now, it was very interesting, in the 911 call that everybody has heard, you said that all of a sudden you found somebody who looked suspicious. He may be on drugs. That was one of the earlier comments that you made in that 911 call. What made you think he was suspicious, and what made you think that he might be on drugs?
I felt he was suspicious because it was raining. He was in between houses, cutting in between houses, and he was walking very leisurely for the weather. It didn't look like he was a resident that went to check their mail and got caught in the rain and was hurrying back home. He didn't look like a fitness fanatic that would train in the rain. He just seemed like...
Weren't there overhangs though? He was walking, he wasn't standing still? And he was walking closer to the house, which is back from the sidewalk?
Yes, sir.
Am I understanding that right?
The overhangs are just in front of the front doors.
Yeah. You said he started from almost the beginning in that 911 call. You said he came towards you and he seemed to reach for something in his waistband. Did you think that was a gun?
I thought he was just trying to intimidate me.
To make you think that there's a gun?
A weapon.
Of some kind?
Possibly.
You said in that tape, something's wrong with him, he's checking me out, I don't know what his deal was. So it's almost from the very beginning, you felt, are you saying on that 911 tape that you felt threatened at that moment when you said that to the dispatch?
No, not particularly.
What did you mean with, I don't know what his deal is, he's checking me out?
The way he was coming back, and I was on the phone, but I was certain I could see him saying something to me, and his demeanor, his body language was confrontational.
Do you remember what it was that you said specifically on the tape? Yeah. You said, then we get to the issue where you said on the 911 call that he's running. You said that to the dispatch. Is there any chance in retrospect, as you look back on that night and what happened, trying to maybe get into the mindset, because we also have learned that Trayvon was speaking with his girlfriend supposedly at the time, that maybe he was afraid of you, didn't know who you were?
No.
You don't think that, why do you think that he was running then?
Well, maybe I said running, but he was more...
You said he was running?
Yes. He was like skipping, going away quickly, but he wasn't running out of fear.
You can tell the difference?
He wasn't running.
He wasn't actually running?
No, sir.
Okay, but that's what you said to the dispatcher, you thought he was running. And let me ask you this. At that point, we can hear the unbuckling of the seatbelt, hear you opening the car door, and the dispatch asked you at that point, and this became a very key moment that everyone in the media focused on, and the dispatcher asked you, are you following him? And you said yes. Explain that.
I meant that I was going in the same direction as him, to keep an eye on him so that I could tell the police where he was going. I didn't mean that I was actually pursuing him.
So this moment where someone suggested you were out of breath on that tape, you yourself were not running.
No, sir.
And you, I think, made a statement to the police that it was the wind as you were getting out of the car and moving, and that was the sound we hear, not you out of breath.
Yes, sir.
And welcome back to Hannity. We continue now with more of my exclusive interview with George Zimmerman and his attorney, Mark O'Mara. What did you do from that moment forward? Because this is where we get into this minute gap in this case. You know, and what did you do from that minute forward when the dispatch said, we don't need you to follow him? What did you do next?
I walked across the sidewalk onto my street, Retreat View Circle, where I thought I would meet a police officer that I had called.
So you did not continue to follow him at that point?
No, sir.
All right, so you continue from there. You sounded at that moment on the tape, though, a little bit distracted. What was the distraction? That you were looking for him, or?
I wanted to make sure that, I believe they asked me for my address, and I wanted to be sure that nobody was lingering and could hear my address and then come back, and I was making sure that there wasn't anybody that was going to surprise me, and just trying to give them an accurate location.
Because they said, you know, can we meet you here at a certain location? You said, have them call me.
Yes.
Why did you want them at that point to call you?
I hadn't given them correct address. I gave them the clubhouse vicinity. However, I was walking through to my street, Retreat View Circle, and I was going to give them the actual street number and name.
How long was it, George, after that you saw Trayvon again? Because you said you stopped, that you did not continue pursuing him. When did you next see Trayvon Martin?
Less than 30 seconds.
Okay. Where exactly were you at that point? And how far away were you from your car at that moment?
I guess about 100 feet or more.
So you never went further than how far approximately from your car?
I'd estimate it to be approximately 100 feet.
So you never went further than that from the car?
No, sir.
Okay. And so at that point, Trayvon is, all of a sudden you turned around and there he was?
Yes, sir.
What happened next?
He asked me what my problem was.
Export problem.
Yes, sir. And I was wearing a rain jacket, and I put my cell phone in my jacket pocket as opposed to my jeans pocket where I normally keep it. And I immediately went to grab my phone to this time call 911 instead of a non-emergency. And when I reached into my pants pocket, because that's where I keep it out of habit, it wasn't there, and I was shocked. I looked up, and he punched me and broke my nose.
One shot.
Yes, sir.
So he said to you, you have the problem. Those were the exact words he used. You remember it?
Do you have a problem? What's your problem?
What's your problem? And you said to him, I don't have a problem.
Yes, sir.
You reached for your phone.
I reached for it as I was saying, no, I don't have a problem.
And at that point, you just got hit.
He was already within arm's length from me.
And was that the punch in the nose that broke your nose?
Yes, sir.
Right there, and you went immediately down to the ground?
I don't remember if I went immediately to the ground or if he pushed me to the ground, but I ended up on the ground.
What do you remember happened from there? Because there were police reports and descriptions that you gave, and that you were a little bit dazed, obviously, and at one point you said that you wanted to stop him from hitting your head on the cement.
Yes, sir.
Is that what you told the police?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so after that first hit, what happened next?
He started bashing my head into the concrete sidewalk. As soon as he broke my nose, I started yelling for help. So I was disoriented, and he started slamming my head into the concrete.
Which is where the lacerations came from.
Yes, sir.
You said it was like your head was going to explode, was a comment that you had given to the police.
Yes, sir. He continued to punch me in the head.
How many times would you estimate that he punched you?
Several. More than a dozen.
And hitting you hard. At what moment did you, because you said you feared for your life, at what moment do you remember when you literally, do you remember when you thought, I may die? Is that, because you said that you feared for your life. Do you remember the exact moment when you felt that?
In hindsight, I would say when he was slamming my head into the concrete and I thought I'd lose consciousness, I didn't know what would happen at that point.
And how close was the concrete to the grass? Because a big issue was also the grass stains that you had on your clothes. And you had made a statement to the police that you wanted to get to the grass. Was that to protect your head from getting banged into the cement again?
Yes, sir.
How close was that in proximity?
It butts up to the concrete.
And were you able to get to the grass?
Yes, sir.
And how did you do that?
I guess you could say shimmy. I mean, he was straddled on me with his full weight, and I would try and sit up and push myself down. And whenever I would sit up, that's when he would take the opportunity to slam my head back down and punch me in the head and continue to hit my nose.
Was he talking to you a lot during this fight, when he was beating you? Because you're saying he's beating you and pounding your head into the cement. Was he talking to you during that time?
Yes.
And he was saying?
Cursing, telling me to shut up, and then finally telling me he was going to kill me.
And he said those words. And he said it. When did he first see your gun?
After we were on the ground, I shimmied with him on top of me, and it made my jacket rise up, and he being on top of me saw it on my right side.
What happened after that?
I felt him take, he had, after he couldn't hit my head on the concrete anymore, he started to try to suffocate me, and I continued to push his hands off of my mouth and my nose, particularly because it was excruciating, having a broken nose and him putting his weight on it. And that's the point in time when he started telling me to shut up, shut up, shut up.
Why did he tell you to shut up?
I don't know.
We heard the screams on the one recording from the neighbor that was calling the police, and there's been some dispute whose voice that is. Was that your voice screaming, or was that Trayvon Martin's voice screaming?
My voice. Absolutely.
That was your voice?
Yes, sir.
And the police even said at one time they heard 14 screams. You were screaming that loud?
Yes, sir.
And you said to the police at one point that he put his hand over your mouth. Do you think that was to silence you from screaming?
Yes, sir. I believe he, from what the investigators told me, he knew that I was talking to the police, and I was yelling so that I believed that the police officer was there, and they just couldn't find me. So I was yelling in the hopes that they were in the vicinity and they would come when they heard me yelling.
Do you remember when you yourself reached for your weapon? Do you remember that moment?
Yes, sir.
Tell us about that.
At that point, I realized that it wasn't my gun, it wasn't his gun, it was the gun.
Did he say anything? Because you said he was talking a lot about the gun. Did he say he noticed the gun?
He said, "You're going to die tonight," and took one hand off of my mouth, and I felt it going down my chest towards my belt and my holster, and that's when I didn't have any more time.
Do you think he acted more out of a conscious thought? I mean, I know these events happen very quickly. Do you remember consciously thinking, I've got to grab my gun? Or did you just do it? Was there a conscious thought that went through your head that you thought you were going to die and that you had to take this, you had to get your weapon and fire?
I'd love to give you an answer.
You don't know.
It just happened so quickly.
Now, there was an eyewitness that was out from the very beginning that, in fact, did tell the police the night of the shooting that he saw Trayvon on top of you and did see the beating. There is no witness to the actual shooting itself. Right? Correct?
Besides myself.
Besides yourself.
Yes, sir.
When you think back, and there was one report, or a police report, that actually said you didn't know after you fired, you thought you missed?
I didn't think I hit him, yes.
Yeah. So what happened immediately after the shooting then, George? I understand one guy came out, he said he had a flashlight, that he spoke to you, and you said to call your wife, tell her what happened, that I shot somebody. Do you remember that conversation?
The conversation I had with the gentleman, or?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
You do remember that conversation. And he did talk about it, and what his suggestion is that you were very matter-of-fact about it. Do you remember what you said to him? Do you think you were in a state of shock? Did you know that when did you know that Trayvon had died?
When probably about an hour after I got to the police station.
After the shooting, you saw that he was laying there, and obviously injured, there was a moment where you realized that he was shot.
Like I said, he sat up and he said something to the effect of, "You got it," or "You got me." I assumed he meant, "Okay, you got the gun, I didn't get it, I'm not going to fight anymore." At which point, I got out from under him.
Is there anything you regret? Do you regret getting out of the car to follow Trayvon that night?
No, sir.
Do you regret that you had a gun that night?
No, sir.
Do you feel you wouldn't be here for this interview if you didn't have that gun?
No, sir.
You feel you would not be here?
I feel that it was all God's plan, and for me to second guess it or judge it.
Is there anything you might do differently in retrospect, now that time has passed a little bit?
No, sir.
You know, a detective said, that Detective Singleton said, he quoted you saying, the bad guys always get away. You also said that in the 911 tape. Did you have a feeling that there were a lot of people that do get away with crimes? In other words, were you sort of predisposed in your mind in some way to think that criminals get away too often?
Not in general. I think in our neighborhood, there's geographic advantages for burglaries.
Do you have any idea, why do you think Trayvon would have confronted you the way he did? I made a comment on the air one day, and I got beaten up pretty bad for saying this could have all just been a terrible misunderstanding or mistake. Do you think maybe, is there any possibility he thought you were after him and you thought he was after you, and there was some misunderstanding in any way?
I've wrestled with that for a long time, but I can't. One of my biggest issues through this ordeal has been the media conjecture, and I can't assume or make believe.
The one witness that you first met, the guy with the cell phone that I mentioned, asked about your demeanor right after the shooting. He was the first person, I guess, on the scene?
Yes, sir.
First person you saw. And he said that you looked like you had been, quote, butt-whooped, like you had had a fight, and that you were asking, call my wife, just tell my wife. But, you know, he was acting like it was nothing. Is that how you were feeling at the time? Because you didn't find out, you said, till later that Trayvon had passed away.
No, I knew that I had discharged my firearm, and I was scared, nervous. I also thought the police were going to come and see me with a firearm and shoot me. I mean, I was terrified.
Did you look over at Trayvon? You obviously at some point recognized he had been shot, because you didn't know it in the beginning. Did you look over at him at any time and realize he was in really bad shape?
No, sir.
At no point. And how long was it between the time you shot him to the time the police actually got to the scene?
It felt like forever. I'd say 15 to 30 seconds.
It was that quick?
Yes, sir.
Immediately. So in other words, they had already been on their way, and they were there within 15 to 30 seconds. What do you make of all the national media attention in this case? There are crimes that happen every day. The nation is focused on your case. Why do you think that is, and what do you make of it? And what does it mean to you?
It's surreal. I don't like that they've rushed to judgment the way they have. I feel that anytime they have a story that's remotely positive, they interpret it negatively.
You had called police on at least 4 prior occasions and had mentioned black male suspects. I wanted to give you a chance to respond. Why you called, what were those instances about?
They also stated that, and I never volunteered that information. It was always at their request that I described them, and even when I described them, I didn't volunteer the race until they asked me. And there was also Hispanic kids and white kids that were in the
that you made calls about.
Yes, sir.
Let me ask you this. I want to go back to one specific in the case, if I can. And it's the issue of you following him. And we heard, I asked you earlier about the dispatch call, and you said you stopped, you didn't follow him. There's one moment that you were apparently, as you look at the grounds of where this took place, and there's the apartment, and there's the overhangs, and then there's another street on the other side, and you had gone to the other street, correct?
Yes, sir.
At some point. So how do you get to the other street if you're not following him? I mean, where were you going at that point?
I was walking from where I had parked my car towards my street. He went right down in between the houses. I walked straight across to...
But in that sense, were you following him?
No, sir.
You weren't following him?
No, sir.
And this is after the 911 call?
During
the 911 call?
When they stated, we don't need you to do
So why were you walking back to your street and not back to the car?
I was...
At that point, if I'm trying to get the chronology right.
Certainly. Where I parked my car was the back of townhouses. There wasn't a way to know what the street number was. And I knew if I walked straight through, it's a circle, Retreat View Circle. I knew if I walked straight through to there, that would be Retreat View Circle, and then I could tell them exactly what 1234 Retrieview Circle, and not just a general area of where my car was like I had done previously.
Please be seated. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed your lunch. During the lunch hour, if your answer is yes to any of my questions, please raise your hand. During the lunch hour, did any of you have any discussions amongst yourselves or with anybody else about the case? No hands are being raised. Did any of you read or listen to any radio, television, or newspaper reports about the case? No hands are being raised. Did any of you use any type of an electronic device to go on the internet to do independent research about the case, people, places, things, or terminology? No hands are being raised. And finally, did any of you read or create any emails, text messages, Twitters, tweets, blogs, or social networking pages about the case? No hands are being raised. Thank you very much. Mr. De La Rianda?
There have been a number of break-ins in the neighborhood. Why were you a community watch person? How long were you involved in that, and why did you become a community watch person?
In August of 2011, there was a home invasion. A young lady was home with her 9-month-old baby, and they broke in her sliding glass door. She barricaded herself in the upstairs bedroom, and my wife was home by herself, and she saw the people that burglarized her run through our backyard with their belongings, and even though my wife wasn't certain what happened, that was enough to scare her and shake her up, and I promised her I would do what I could to keep her safe.
Your gun was legal. You had a legal weapon in the state of Florida.
Yes, sir.
Why did you feel the need? And tonight, in an interview that you will only see right here on Hannity, George Zimmerman, the man charged with second-degree murder of Trayvon Martin, breaks his silence. Now, earlier today, I traveled to Seminole County, Florida. Let's go back to the night of the shooting. Take us back to that night. You were going to the store. Let's start at the beginning.
I was going to Target to do my weekly grocery shopping. Sunday nights was the only nights, Sunday after we mentored the kids, we would always go grocery shopping and do our cooking for the week. So I wanted to go to Target, and I headed out, and that's the last time I've been home.
Since then, you never went back since that day. We all have heard the 911 call. On that 911 call, you had mentioned you could carry a gun. A lot of people maybe have a weapon inside their home, but you decided to carry yours. Why did you think it was necessary to have a weapon with you, and did you carry it at all times?
I carried it at all times except for when I went to work.
Yeah. A lot of this case, legally, has to do with stand your ground. You've heard a lot about it, and I was just curious, prior to this night, this incident, had you even heard stand your ground?
No, sir.
You'd never heard about it before? Wow. Now, it was very interesting, in the 911 call that everybody has heard, you said that all of a sudden you found somebody who looked suspicious, he may be on drugs. That was one of the earlier comments that you made in that 911 call. What made you think he was suspicious, and what made you think that he might be on drugs?
I felt he was suspicious because it was raining.
Your Honor, at this time we would formally play the Hannity interview on July 18th, 2012, and I think there's a preliminary instruction, of course.
Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, at the direction of the court, certain portions of the defendant's interview with Sean Hannity on July 18th, 2012 have been excised or redacted based upon legal determinations made by the court. The parts excised or redacted are not relevant, and you are not to concern yourselves with why this occurred or with the content of any excised or redacted portions. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. This, for the record, states Exhibit 180.